The Stranded Pilot. Marcus Vale had 3 rules for survival in the Outer Territories. Never trust a fuel gauge on a ship older than yourself, always keep emergency rations that actually taste edible, and never stay longer than necessary on stations where the gravity feels wrong. Nebula Point Station violated that 3rd rule in every possible way. The artificial gravity here had a weird fluctuation that made his stomach flip every few hours, and the air recyclers gave everything a metallic taste that no amount of cheap whiskey could wash away. Unfortunately, cheap whiskey was all he could afford right now. His ship, the Drifter's Luck, sat dead in Bay 7 with a blown plasma core that would cost more credits than he'd seen in 6 months. The repair estimate had made him laugh, then curse, then seriously consider just walking out an airlock and being done with it. Instead, he found himself at a place called the Void's Edge, a cantina that catered to the kind of people who had nowhere better to be. The lighting was dim, the furniture was bolted down, and the other patrons looked like they were either running from something or running toward nothing. He fit right in. Marcus sat at the corner of the bar, nursing something the bartender claimed was Centauri whiskey, but tasted more like engine degreaser mixed with regret. His credit balance blinked accusingly on his wrist display, showing numbers that were rapidly approaching 0. The bartender, a grizzled human with more scars than conversation skills, slid another glass toward him without being asked. Marcus caught it and drank without thinking. The burn was familiar now, almost comforting. Around him, the cantina hummed with the universal language of people trying to forget. A group of miners argued loudly about claim rights, their voices rough with dust and disappointment. 2 smugglers in the corner were conducting business in hushed tones, occasionally glancing around to make sure no one was paying attention. No one was. Marcus was considering whether drinking more would solve his problems or just postpone them when someone slid onto the stool beside him. He glanced over and completely forgot what he'd been thinking. She had skin the color of twilight, a deep, rich purple that seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence. Her features were elegant, with high cheekbones and a delicate jaw, but it was her eyes that caught him. They were silver, like polished chrome, and they seemed to see right through him. Her hair was long and dark, cascading over her shoulders, and she wore simple clothes, a dark jacket over a fitted shirt and practical pants, but somehow she made them look regal. There was nothing ostentatious about her, no jewelry except for a simple silver band around her wrist, yet she carried herself with a quiet grace that made everyone else in the bar seem crude by comparison. "The seat taken?" she asked, though she was already settling into it. "By you, apparently," Marcus replied, gesturing at the dozen empty seats along the bar. "Though I have to wonder about your decision-making process. This isn't exactly the high-class section." "The company looked interesting," she said, her voice smooth and warm, like honey mixed with smoke. She flagged down the bartender with a casual gesture. "Besides, I've learned that the best conversations happen in places like this where people are too tired to lie." The bartender approached with visible surprise, clearly not used to someone like her in his establishment. She ordered something in a language Marcus didn't recognize, and the bartender's scarred face showed actual respect as he hurried to prepare it. When her drink arrived, it was clear and cold, with actual ice floating in it. Ice was expensive on a station like this, where water was recycled and frozen luxuries were for people with credits to waste. She caught him looking and smiled. "I know people who know people." "Must be nice," Marcus said. "I barely know myself most days." She laughed at that, a genuine sound that made something warm settle in his chest. "I'm Serafina." "Marcus?" "Marcus Vale." He raised his glass in a mock toast. Professional cargo hauler, amateur disaster survivor, and current resident of Rock Bottom. "Rock Bottom?" Serafina repeated, taking a sip of her drink. "Sounds temporary." "Everything's temporary if you wait long enough." "That's either profound or just depressing. I haven't decided which." "Could be both," she said, turning on her stool to face him more directly, those silver eyes studying him with open curiosity. "So, what brings a professional cargo hauler to a place like this?" "Broken ship, empty wallet, and bad luck," Marcus said, finding himself wanting to talk, wanting to tell him things. Maybe it was the whiskey, or maybe it was the way she listened, really listened, like his words actually mattered. "My plasma core decided to die 3 days ago. right after I delivered a cargo of medical supplies to the mining colony on Tertius 4. The repair costs more than the ship is worth, which means I'm basically stranded here until I can figure out how to earn enough credits or convince someone to extend me credit I'll never be able to pay back. That sounds complicated, Serafina said. That's a polite way of saying I'm screwed, Marcus replied. But enough about my problems. What brings someone like you to the Void's edge? You don't exactly look like you belong here. Something flickered across her face, there and gone in an instant. Maybe I needed a break from where I do belong. Maybe I wanted to talk to someone real for a change. Real, Marcus repeated. That's a generous description. Most people would go with broke, desperate, or questionably sober. She laughed again, that unguarded sound that made the dingy cantina feel a little less oppressive. I think you're more interesting than you give yourself credit for. They talked for hours after that. Marcus told her about the absurd situations he'd found himself in over the years. The time he'd accidentally transported a crate of bioluminescent creatures that had turned his cargo bay into a rave. The navigation error that had sent him through a debris field that turned out to be someone's illegal garbage dump. The time he tried to impress a station administrator and had somehow ended up in a formal dinner where he was the only person who didn't know which fork to use. Serafina listened to all of it, occasionally asking questions, more often just smiling or laughing at the right moments. She had a way of making him feel like the most interesting person in the room, even though he knew he was probably just another broke pilot with nothing better to do. When he finally asked about her, she deflected with practiced ease. I do consulting work, diplomatic relations, trade negotiations, very boring stuff involving a lot of standing around in formal clothes pretending to care about export tariffs. That sounds thrilling, Marcus said. It has its moments, she admitted, but mostly it's just exhausting. Everyone wants something, everyone has an agenda, and you're always wondering who's lying and who's just really good at bending the truth. Hence the break, Marcus guessed. Hence the break, she agreed, finishing her drink and setting the glass down with deliberate care. And hence talking to someone who has no idea who I am and doesn't want anything from me except conversation. Marcus felt something shift in his chest at that, a sudden awareness that there was more to her story than she was sharing. But he didn't push. Everyone had secrets out here in the territories. That was half the point of coming this far from the core worlds. Well, he said, raising his glass, here's to being nobody special in a nowhere bar on a nothing station. Serafina smiled and clinked her empty glass against his. To being nobody. But even as she said it, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that she was very much somebody, and that he was getting himself into something he didn't fully understand. The cantina was starting to empty out as the station's night cycle deepened. The miners had left, the smugglers had concluded their business, and even the bartender looked like he was ready to close up. I should probably go, Serafina said, but she didn't move. Probably, Marcus agreed, also not moving. They sat there in comfortable silence for a moment, and then Serafina turned to him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Would you like to continue this conversation somewhere else? Somewhere quieter? Marcus's heart did something complicated in his chest. That depends. Where did you have in mind? There's an observation deck on level 12. Hardly anyone uses it. The view is supposed to be spectacular. You're asking me to sneak onto an observation deck with you? I'm suggesting we enjoy a public amenity together. Perspective matters. Marcus considered this. He considered his broken ship, his empty account, and his life that had somehow narrowed to just surviving from one cargo run to the next. He considered the woman in front of him who laughed like she meant it and had eyes like polished silver. Level 12, Marcus said. Lead the way. She smiled, and Marcus knew he was already in trouble. The good kind, maybe, but trouble, nonetheless.
The connection deepens. Level 12 of Nebula Point Station was quieter than the lower levels, almost eerily so. The corridors here were cleaner, better maintained, and notably absent of the usual traffic that clogged the commercial sectors. Marcus followed Serafina through passages that twisted and turned in ways that suggested she knew exactly where she was going. "You've been here before," he observed, not quite making it a question. "Once or twice," she said, glancing back at him with a small smile. I told you, I know people who know people. The observation deck was exactly as advertised, a curved room with transparent aluminum walls that offered an unobstructed view of the void beyond, stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds thrown carelessly across black velvet. In the distance, a nebula glowed with soft purple and blue light, its gases illuminated by the dying star at its heart. Marcus walked to the window and pressed his palm against the cool surface. Beyond the thin barrier was nothing. Absolutely nothing, for light years in every direction except the fragile shell of the station keeping them alive. "It's beautiful," Serafina said, coming to stand beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "It's terrifying," Marcus replied. "We're a tiny bubble of air and metal floating in something that wants to kill us, and we call it beautiful." "Maybe that's why it's beautiful, because it's dangerous. Because we're small and fragile and somehow still here, still looking out at all of it." He glanced at her, studying her profile in the faint light from the stars. "You're not what I expected when I sat down at that bar tonight." "What did you expect?" "I don't know, another drifter, another person running from something or toward nothing, someone I could drink with and forget by morning." He paused. "Instead, I got you." "And what am I?" Serafina asked, turning to face him fully. "Honestly, I have no idea," Marcus admitted. "You're elegant in a place that doesn't know the meaning of the word. You're mysterious without being irritating about it, and you look at me like I'm worth looking at, which is either very kind or very strange." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers cool against his jaw. "You sell yourself short, Marcus Vale. You've survived out here, in the territories where most people break or disappear. You've turned disasters into stories and kept flying when it would have been easier to quit. That's worth more than you think." "Philosophy from a woman who won't tell me her last name," Marcus said, but his voice had gone rough. "Would knowing my last name change anything?" she asked. "Probably not," he admitted. "Then let's keep the mystery," she said, and then she kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, like she was asking a question rather than making a statement. Marcus responded by pulling her closer, one hand moving to the small of her back, the other cupping the back of her head. Her hair was soft beneath his fingers, and she tasted like the expensive drink she'd had at the bar, cold and sweet with a hint of something exotic. The kiss deepened, becoming less tentative and more urgent. Serafina made a soft sound against his mouth, her hands sliding up his chest to grip his shoulders. Marcus backed her up gently until she was against the observation window, the stars at her back making her seem otherworldly. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against her lips. "Tell me this is a bad idea." "It's probably a terrible idea," she said, breathless. "But I don't want you to stop." They stayed like that for a long moment, kissing slowly, thoroughly, learning each other. Marcus's hands mapped the curve of her waist, the slope of her shoulders. Serafina's fingers tangled in his hair, tugging gently when he kissed the line of her jaw, then lower to her neck. She gasped when he found a sensitive spot just below her ear, her back arching slightly. "Marcus!" The way she said his name, breathless and wanting, made something fierce and protective rise in his chest. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Her silver eyes were dark with desire, her lips slightly swollen from kissing. "You're dangerous," he said. "So are you," she replied. "You just don't know it yet." They moved away from the window eventually, finding a bench along the curved wall where they could sit together. Marcus pulled Serafina onto his lap, and she came willingly, straddling him with her knees on either side of his hips. The new position brought them impossibly closer. Marcus could feel every breath she took, every small movement she made. His hands settled on her hips, thumbs tracing small circles through the fabric of her shirt. "This is crazy," he said. "I don't even know you." "You know enough," Serafina said, leaning down to kiss him again, slower this time. "You know I make you laugh. You know I listen when you talk. You know I chose to be here with you instead of anywhere else I could be." That's not a lot of information to base a decision on, Marcus pointed out, as his hand slid up her back, pulling her closer. Sometimes the best decisions are made with limited information, she said against his mouth. Sometimes you just have to trust what feels right. And this feels right? He asked. Doesn't it? She countered. It did. That was the problem. Or maybe it wasn't a problem. Maybe it was just rare and unexpected and therefore felt wrong simply because he wasn't used to anything good happening to him. They kissed for what felt like hours, sometimes urgent and desperate, sometimes slow and exploratory. Marcus learned that Serafina was ticklish along her ribs, that she made the incredible sounds when he kissed her neck, that her purple skin felt like silk beneath his hands. Serafina learned that Marcus was patient and thorough, that he paid attention to her reactions and adjusted accordingly, that he kissed like it mattered, like she mattered. Eventually they had to come up for air, both of them breathing hard. Marcus rested his forehead against Serafina's, his hand still on her waist, anchoring her to him. I should tell you something, Serafina said quietly. That sounds ominous, Marcus replied. I can't stay, she said, and there was genuine regret in her voice. Not for long. I have obligations, responsibilities, things I can't walk away from no matter how much I might want to. Marcus felt his chest tighten. How long? A few more days, maybe a week, and then I have to go back. Back where? Somewhere far from here, which wasn't really an answer at all. Marcus pulled back slightly so he could see her face. You're really not going to tell me anything, are you? I want to, Serafina said, and she sounded sincere. But the more you know, the more complicated this becomes, and I don't want complicated. I just want this, whatever this is, for as long as I can have it. No strings, no expectations, Marcus said. No strings, she agreed. Just two people who happened to meet at the right time in the wrong place. It should have been a relief, keeping things simple, no commitments, no complications, just enjoying each other's company until reality reasserted itself. Instead, Marcus felt something twist in his chest, a premature sense of loss for something he'd only just found. Okay, he said finally. A few days, no questions asked. She smiled, but there was sadness in it. Thank you. They stayed on the observation deck until the station's artificial dawn began to lighten the corridors, talking about everything and nothing, stealing kisses between conversations. At some point, Marcus's jacket had become a makeshift pillow, and Serafina had curled against his side, her head on his shoulder. I should probably get back to my ship, Marcus said, though he made no move to leave. See if I can figure out how to afford those repairs. What if I could help with that? He stiffened. I'm not a charity case. I know, she said quickly, but I have resources, connections. Maybe I could make some calls, get you a better deal. Why would you do that? He asked. Because I like you, she said simply. Because you make me laugh. Because you listen when I talk. Because I chose to be here with you instead of anywhere else I could be. That's not a lot of information to base a decision on, Marcus pointed out as his hand slid up her back, pulling her closer. Sometimes the best decisions are made with limited information, she said against his mouth. Sometimes you just have to trust what feels right. And this feels right? He asked. Doesn't it? She countered. It did. That was the problem. Or maybe it wasn't a problem. Maybe it was just rare and unexpected and therefore felt wrong simply because he wasn't used to anything good happening to him. They kissed for what felt like hours, sometimes urgent and desperate, sometimes slow and exploratory. Marcus learned that Serafina was ticklish along her ribs, that she made the incredible sounds when he kissed her neck, that her purple skin felt like silk beneath his hands. Serafina learned that Marcus was patient and thorough, that he paid attention to her reactions and adjusted accordingly, that he kissed like it mattered, like she mattered. Eventually they had to come up for air, both of them breathing hard. Marcus rested his forehead against Seraphina's, his hands still on her waist, anchoring her to him. "I should probably get back to my ship," Marcus said, though he made no move to leave. "See if I can figure out how to afford those repairs." "What if I could help with that?" He stiffened. "I'm not a charity case." "I know," she said quickly, "but I have resources, connections. Maybe I could make some calls, get you a better deal."
The perfect night. Marcus spent the day trying to distract himself from thinking about Seraphina, which meant he thought about nothing else. He ran diagnostics on his ship's systems that didn't need diagnosing, reorganized his already organized cargo bay, and checked his credit balance 17 times, as if the numbers might magically improve. By the time evening arrived, he'd showered using the station's expensive water rations, changed into his least worn shirt, and paced the length of Docking Bay 7 approximately 40 times. When Seraphina arrived, she took his breath away. She wore a simple dress the color of midnight, dark and elegant. Her purple skin seemed to glow against the fabric. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she carried a bag that smelled incredible. "You actually brought food?" Marcus said. "I told you I would," she replied, smiling at his obvious surprise. "I keep my promises, Marcus." They set up in his ship's small common area, which Marcus had cleaned frantically for the past hour. Seraphina unpacked containers of real food, not protein paste or reconstituted rations, but actual cooked meals that must have cost a fortune on a station like this. "This is too much," Marcus protested weakly. "It's dinner," Seraphina said. "Let yourself enjoy something nice for once." They ate slowly, talking and laughing between bites. The food was incredible, flavors Marcus had almost forgotten existed. But better than the food was the company. Seraphina seemed more relaxed tonight, more open, as if she'd made some decision that freed her from whatever had been holding her back. After dinner, they moved to his small sleeping quarters, not with urgency, but with gentle inevitability, like two planets pulled into the same orbit. Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk, and Seraphina stood before him, her silver eyes searching his face. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said, reaching for her hand. She came to him then, straddling his lap, as she had on the observation deck. But this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. They kissed deeply, hands exploring with more confidence now, learning each other's bodies. Marcus's fingers found the fastening of her dress. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. "Don't stop," she whispered back. The dress fell away, revealing purple skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Marcus traced patterns across her shoulders, down her arms, marveling at how soft she felt. Seraphina's hands worked at his shirt, pulling it over his head with impatient fingers. They fell back onto the bunk together, a tangle of limbs and whispered words. Marcus kissed every inch of skin he could reach, learning what made Seraphina gasp, what made her arch against him. She was responsive and unafraid, matching his intensity with her own. When they finally came together, it was with a gentleness that surprised them both. Marcus moved slowly, watching her face, memorizing every expression. Seraphina's hands gripped his shoulders, her silver eyes locked on his. "Marcus," she breathed, and the way she said his name felt like a confession. They made love slowly, thoroughly, taking their time despite the urgency building between them. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bunk, skin against skin, hearts still racing. Seraphina traced patterns on Marcus's chest, her touch feather-light. "She has something to tell me," she said quietly. "That sounds serious," Marcus replied, though his stomach tightened with worry. "I leave in 2 days," she said. "I can't stay any longer. My responsibilities, they're not something I can ignore forever." Marcus felt his chest constrict. 2 days. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "Come with me then," he said suddenly, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "When my ship is fixed, come with me. We'll go anywhere you want." Seraphina's expression was heartbreaking. full of longing and regret. "I can't, Marcus. I wish I could, but my life, it's not that simple." "Make it simple," he said, knowing he was being unfair but unable to stop himself. "Choose this. Choose us." "If I could, I would," she said, and there were tears in her silver eyes. "But some choices aren't mine to make." They held each other in the darkness of his small quarters, neither of them sleeping, both of them trying to memorize the feeling of being together, knowing that soon it would only be a memory. "I won't forget you," Marcus said, as the station's artificial dawn began to brighten the viewport. "I won't forget you either," Serafina promised. "No matter what happens, no matter where I go, I'll remember this. I'll remember you." She kissed him one last time, slow and deep and desperate. Then she dressed and left before he could find more words to make her stay. Marcus lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, the smell of her still on his sheets, the taste of her still on his lips, and the certainty in his heart that he'd just let something precious slip through his fingers. 2 days. He had 2 more days with her, and he intended to make every moment count. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be enough. Nothing would ever be enough.
The truth revealed. Marcus met Serafina the next day at the same cantina where they'd first encountered each other, trying to pretend that everything was normal, that his chest didn't ache every time he looked at her, knowing she'd be gone soon. They spent hours together, walking through the station's markets, sharing meals, stealing kisses in quiet corners. Serafina seemed different today, more present but also more distant, as if she was trying to be completely there while simultaneously preparing to leave. "One more night," she said as they stood at another observation deck, watching ships come and go. "Tomorrow I have to return." "To where?" Marcus asked. "You still won't tell me." "I can't," she said, and the pain in her voice was real. "Marcus, if things were different—" "But they're not," he finished for her. They were walking back toward the docking bays when everything changed. A group of uniformed guards appeared in the corridor ahead, their armor marked with insignia Marcus didn't recognize, but that clearly denoted authority. They moved with military precision, scanning faces in the crowd. Serafina went rigid beside him. "We need to go," she said urgently. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, but she was already pulling him toward a side corridor. They didn't make it. "Your Majesty," one of the guards called out, his voice carrying across the space. "Please, we've been searching for you." Marcus froze, the words not quite making sense in his head. "Your Majesty?" he repeated. Serafina closed her eyes, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Marcus, I can explain." "Your Majesty," he said, again louder this time. "What is he talking about?" The guards approached quickly, surrounding them but keeping a respectful distance from Serafina. The lead guard bowed slightly. "Queen Serafina, the council has been frantic. You've been gone for 5 days without security, without notice." "Queen," Marcus said, the word feeling foreign in his mouth. Serafina turned to him, her silver eyes pleading. "Marcus, please, let me explain." "You're a queen," he said, his voice flat. "You're royalty, and you didn't think that was important information to share." "I wanted to be normal," she said desperately. "I wanted to be just Serafina, not Queen Serafina of the Valorian Empire, not someone with duties and obligations and an entire civilization depending on her decisions. I just wanted to be a person talking to another person." "So you lied," Marcus said. "I didn't lie," she protested. "I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing," he shot back, anger and hurt warring in his chest. "You let me think we were the same. 2 nobodies in a nowhere station. You let me fall for you knowing it was impossible." "I fell for you too," Serafina said, tears streaming down her face now. "Marcus, everything between us was real." The lead guard cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Your Majesty, we really must return. The council is threatening sanctions. There are treaties that need your attention." "Give me a moment," Serafina said sharply, her voice now carrying the weight of command. The guard stepped back, giving them space, but not leaving. Serafina reached for Marcus's hand, but he pulled away. "I have to go," she said quietly. "I have responsibilities I cannot abandon, an entire empire that depends on me." "Then go," Marcus said, his voice cold, even as his heart was breaking. Go back to your empire, your council, your duties. Forget about the broke cargo pilot you slummed with for a few days." "Marcus, don't," she pleaded. "What did you think would happen? That I'd be okay with this? That finding out your royalty wouldn't change anything? I'm nobody, Serafina. I'm exactly what you wanted to escape from reality. But I'm not enough to make you stay." "That's not fair," she said. "None of this is fair," Marcus replied. "Go home, Your Majesty. Your people need you." Serafina looked at him for a long moment, memorizing his face one last time. Then she turned and walked toward the guards, her posture straightening, her expression smoothing into something regal and distant. Marcus watched her go, watched the guards form up around her, watched her disappear into the crowd without looking back. He stood there long after she was gone, feeling hollow and foolish and completely alone. The impossible choice. 3 months passed like a slow death. Marcus got his ship repaired. The credits appeared in his account the day after Serafina left, transferred anonymously, but he knew where they came from. He wanted to refuse them, wanted to send them back, but pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. He took cargo runs, drifted from station to station, tried to forget purple skin and silver eyes and the way she'd said his name in the darkness. He failed completely. News reached even the outer territories about the Valorian Empire, about their young queen who'd disappeared for 5 days and returned changed, quieter, less engaged with the pageantry of royal life. There were rumors of suitors being rejected, of the council growing frustrated with her refusal to consider marriage alliances. Marcus tried not to follow the news, tried not to care. He failed at that too. Then 4 months after she left, a message arrived on his ship's communication system. Official seal of the Valorian Empire, coordinates to the royal palace, and a simple request. Please come. Marcus stared at the message for 3 days before making his decision. The royal palace was everything he had expected and worse. Massive, opulent, designed to intimidate and impress. Guards in ceremonial armor stood at every entrance. Courtiers in expensive clothing whispered in corners. Everything glinned with wealth and power. Marcus felt completely out of place in his flight jacket and worn boots. A steward led him through corridors that seemed to go on forever, finally stopping at ornate doors that opened into a private garden. Serafina stood among flowering plants that Marcus didn't recognize, her back to him, wearing a simple gown that somehow made her look more regal than any crown could. "You came," she said without turning around. "I asked," Marcus replied. She turned then, and he saw that she'd been crying. Her silver eyes were red-rimmed, her expression exhausted. "I've been miserable," she said simply. "Every day without you has been torture. I sit in council meetings and think about you. I review trade agreements and remember how you made me laugh. I smile for my people and feel hollow inside." "Then why did you leave?" Marcus asked. "Because I had to," she said. "Because I have responsibilities. Because an entire civilization depends on me making the right choices." "And what choice are you making now?" he asked. Serafina walked toward him, closing the distance between them. "I'm choosing you," she said. "If you'll have me, I'm choosing us." "You can't just abandon your empire," Marcus said. "I'm not," she replied. "I'm asking you to join me here, to be with me, to help me carry the weight of the crown. It won't be easy. The council will object. There will be scandals and political complications. You'll have to learn court protocol and deal with people who think you're not good enough. But I don't care about any of that. I just want you." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "You're asking me to give up everything, my ship, my freedom, my life." "I'm asking you to start a new life," Serafina corrected, "with me. I know it's not fair. I know I'm asking for more than I have any right to. But I love you, Marcus Vale. I fell in love with you in that terrible cantina, and I haven't stopped. So I'm asking, please, will you stay?" Marcus looked at her, at the woman who was both a queen and the person who'd made him feel alive again. He thought about his ship sitting empty in the docking bay, about cargo runs to nowhere, about a life of drifting. Then he thought about waking up next to her every morning, about being the person she turned to when the weight of the crown became too heavy, about building something real together, despite the impossibility of it all. "I must be crazy." "Is that a yes?" Serafina asked hopefully. "That's a yes," Marcus confirmed, and then she was in his arms, kissing him like she'd never let go. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too.
even though you're royalty and I'm nobody." "You're not nobody," Serafina said firmly. "You're the man who made a queen remember what it feels like to be human. You're the person I choose, Marcus, above duty, above obligation, above everything. I choose you. Then I choose you too." They stood together in the garden, holding each other as the artificial sun set over the palace. Two people from completely different worlds who'd somehow found each other in the darkness. It wouldn't be easy, Marcus knew that. There would be challenges and complications and people who would never accept him. But as Serafina took his hand and led him back toward the palace, toward their future together, Marcus realized that some risks were worth taking, some impossible choices were worth making, and some people were worth giving up everything for. "So," he said as they walked, "do I have to call you Your Majesty now?" Serafina laughed, that genuine sound he'd fallen in love with. "In public, yes. In private, I'm just Serafina, the woman with the most beautiful ass in the galaxy, remember?" "How could I forget?" Marcus said, grinning. "Good," she said, squeezing his hand. "Don't ever forget. Don't forget who we were before all of this. Promise me." "I promise." And he meant it. Whatever came next, they would face it together. A queen and a cargo pilot, royalty and nobody. Two people who'd chosen love over logic and each other over everything. It was crazy, impossible, completely impractical. It was perfect.